Helo, Symai. Croeso cynnes yma I Ero Fawr yn Ynys Môn. Hello, warm welcome to you all here at Ero Fawr in Anglesey. As you can see, we're live here from the farm. I appreciate it's not as good as actually being on farm, but considering the weather, how it's been today, I think we're better off here in a quite cosy shed, to be honest with you.
Very warm welcome to you to Ero Fawr, and as you can see, we are here in the cubicle shed with the cattle in the background, and I'm certain that it's far better in here than as we did as intended and faced a field outside.
The majority of the meeting this evening will be in Welsh, and there is simultaneous translation. So all you need to do is hover over the languages options on your iPad or PC, and then select the Korean language, and then that should provide you with either Welsh or English feed. So we'll let you sort that out, and then we'll make a start of it here.
So as I mentioned, it's not quite an event on farm, but hopefully you can bear with us, and we will provide you with an update of some of the exciting work that has been going on here at Ero Fawr. So an update of the work that's been undertaken here. And I'd be exceptionally glad if during the event you could send questions to us. I'll be monitoring the questions so to ensure that we do answer the right questions, and that we ask the right questions of our panelists and speakers who will be joining us later on. Just to initially then present who we have on the call this evening, we have a number of contributors to this evening's event. Rhys Davies, who is our technical officer, who is working here at Ero Fawr and has been doing so for over a year, helping to develop the Grassland Management projects and some of the forthcoming projects that we'll touch on later on. Rhys also will talk in a bit of detail about the grazing system here and how effectively you can get the best from your grazing, and much of the conversation this evening will focus on getting more milk from grass. Dewi Evans will talk about a project that we are collaborating with North Wales Police on to try to improve security on farms, and I'm certain that a number of us will bear witness to some of the issues of theft from farms, motorbikes, etc., and stock rustling, and we'll be looking at how we can use technology and new methods to mitigate that problem. Also, we will have a conversation with Geraint Hughes, who is working on a project where we look to use technology to monitor and to manage slurry on our farms. So we will have a discussion about that technology. And Tristan Sean, who will talk a bit about the activities and the assistance available via Farming Connect. But first of all, I need to introduce the stars of this event, Gredig, Ivan and Martin. So in turn, we will speak to each and every one of them to explain what we are doing here. But thank you very much for all the work that you have been doing to date. It's been an exceptionally difficult period, and you've been having a conversation with myself and the team about the delivery of the project, and having to do so remotely as we are doing this evening. So it's great to see your enthusiasm about continuing with the project. Also, as it happens, I live locally to Ero Fawr. It's only a few miles from my home here, and I spent a lot of time here as a child, so it's great to be back here again. So that's enough from me for now. Gredig, do you mind giving us an overview, if you will, of the farm as it stands currently in terms of the land where we are, and we'll talk a bit more about the herd later.
So
we're about 2 miles from Valley. We farm 300 acres in this particular block that's around the farm, and there's another 150 acres across the river. We calve all year round, and we produce around 9,000 litres annually. We aim to try to produce as much as we can off the grass, and the project that we've started here and have been involved with over the past year, since its inception, we've seen that the project has actually come upon us at an appropriate time, because a number of pieces that fit into the jigsaw and things that work well in order for us to find some good results. Hopefully the audience would have been able to possibly see some drone footage of Fawr taken at a time when the weather was a bit more clement than what it is today. So hopefully you'll be able to see how the farm functions. As Craig mentioned, there's over 300 acres on the platform. There's a river, the River Allow, that splits the holding in two, and that presents additional challenges in terms of moving cattle from one place to the next, etc., and managing the slurry. Well, we graze a number of the younger heifers away across the river, and we try to grow as much maize crop and whole crop, etc., and carry it in. That's what we've been doing over the years, and that then enables us to use the forage that we grow ourselves to feed the cattle over the winter months. With it, we shout out credit on Anglesey. The potential to grow grass here is absolutely enormous. We'll touch on that later on. But in terms of the herd then, what's the type of cow that you aim to keep here? Well, we have been breeding Holsteins over the years since Dad started out in 1983, I believe. We had more of a Frisian type, and we've moved into a more Holstein type, and over the years the Holstein has developed somewhat, and there are new genetics that have come on, genomics have come on, and there's greater emphasis, if you will, on the PLI and the fertility, which effectively makes the cows more profitable. So you talked about the type of farm and the type of cow that you have. We'll have some more details later on. So what are the business objectives in going forward? Well, we've identified that there's a potential in starting this project that we can grow a lot of grass, and we want to use that to a greater extent and target possibly more and more cattle to graze the grazing platform, to grow more grass, and possibly try to offer a bit more slack in the system in order for us to have a bit more time for the season to be easier to work with. Certainly, you mentioned the importance of grass management, and you showed me some figures early on that the farm grows 15 tons of dry matter per hectare, which is tremendous, to be honest, and you see that there's room to further develop on that. We'll touch on that later on. Ivan, if I could turn to you for a moment, how do you see the farm and the herd changing over the years, considering that you established it in the 80s? Yes, 83, just before the quotas. Yeah, there were British Frisian cows back then. It was a type that we bought from Stafford. We bought 100 heifers there. And yes, I mean, they were heifers that were smaller in stature than the Holstein cow. But due to the fact that these are able to yield more milk, we decided to use bulls from Genus and Cemex to get better cows. Sometimes it worked, sometimes sadly it didn't. Almost 40 years since we started doing it, we find that there has been a lot of development, and as Craig mentioned, there are new developments that come upon us all the time that tends to leave me behind when it comes to talking about PLIs, etc. I can't believe for one second that you're being left behind. You've got a degree in economics from Aberystwyth, so I don't believe for one moment that you're being left behind. But what do you feel is the future here at Fawr? That you're able to take a step back now and possibly, as a football manager, as he steps back and sees the bigger picture. Well, I have stood back in order for Craig to be afforded the opportunity to develop the farm as he wants. We don't always agree, but most of the time we are pulling in the same direction, trying to make the farm more profitable and ensuring that we are still in the game effectively. So Craig has already mentioned about the grassland management aspect. Now, obviously, you have a clear strategy in place that you're looking to grow more grass and reduce costs, etc. What are your views about that and your views on the developments? Well, over the years, we have been trying to reseed using high quality seeds and essentially trying to develop, and the seeds now are better than what we used to sow. SG3 was the popular one back then. I think it's still around. So this grass theme isn't too far away, and you're both going on the right track. Just to provide a context, and we'll talk a bit more about it later on, but over the past year or so, since 2019, you had 4,000 litres coming off grass. This year is 4,800. There's a 20% increase, showing that that progress can be made rapidly, and that increase can be made rapidly. Martin, I understand that you have some expertise, that you're a bit of an expert in this, so you have seen that development moving on quite rapidly. Yes, it has taken time for the cows to adapt to the new system, but the amount of grass that grows now in comparison with last year, we've seen so much more silage being taken away, taken off the platform, and more cattle grazing as well. There are a few farms, certainly on the Llŷn Peninsula, who are achieving 18 tonnes per hectare. So certainly the potential there is to achieve that tremendous average, and that would be a big increase. If we can touch on, while we are presenting the farm to the audience, in terms of herd fertility, will you talk a bit about the fertility? Often it can be a challenge. Yes, well, as we did in years gone by, we'd leave the cattle out to graze throughout the summer months. We call them the high yielders and the incavers, but we found that the fertility was a bit sporadic. We couldn't get a handle on it, so we started keeping the high yielders in, 150 of those being kept in until they're in calf. And then there's an RMS team, Geralt and his team attend here on a daily basis to chalk up the cows, and they have achieved a good success rate over the past 2-3 years since they've been working with us, and we've increased that preg rate from 19% up to 25%. So that effectively enables us to have a good number of cattle that are in calf so that they can be turned out to grass, and we are able to challenge those cows with the Holsteins. They are cows that we have bred to be somewhat smaller, but possibly a bit more fertile with a better weight. You mentioned that the calving interval was 371, which I feel it's credit to you that is at such a good level, considering that the average is over 400. And we get the milk, effectively it's an average of 9,000 litres, but we get that due to the fact that we target the yields in the cattle as they calve, and we tend to keep the dry cows in after we dry them off. They're in for about 6 weeks, and those are then transitioned over to come into calving in a good condition. That transition period is key, and that's going to be one of the projects that we will be focusing on with you in the future. Possibly we'll have an opportunity to talk about that later on. But you mentioned the preg rate, the 25%, which, bearing in mind that the national average is 19%, obviously you're way above the national average. And the point that you made clearly to me was that every index point is worth £12,000. So everyone that you improve, you put 12,000 on your bottom line. So it's a tremendous sum, to be honest. We have far more calves within a year, so there's a value to that, and we use sex semen, we rear more heifers, and possibly are able to sell surplus of stock if necessary. You mentioned that you calve the heifers down at a decent age, which is a good target, and obviously something you're happy with. Well, yes, we have improved over the years and have learned through the assistance that we have been able to call on. We've learned a great deal about calf rearing. That work is done enthusiastically, and we give a lot of time. You talk about the team that you mentioned there, and we've got a significant part of the team here this evening. Who is the team that you have working here? where we have two full-time. We have Martin, who does the management work. He's the one who looks after the grassland management, and he then can take some time to set things up, and Sarah goes down to measure the grass. Sarah, your wife, you mentioned your wife earlier, who is an integral part of the team. She passes that information from measurement on to Martin through AgriNet, and then we have a weekly discussion about what we will do, with what decisions we'll make with which paddocks, where we cut silage, etc., and the way that we plan ahead. And then we have Cass who's doing the calves and helping with the milking and doing some tractor work. So there are 5 of us in total, and the cows took the opportunity to remind us that they're an important part of the team. Without them, it wouldn't be a good team at all. That's enough from me momentarily. We'll bring Rhys into this discussion.
We'll bring Rhys into the conversation now.
Rhys, you have been an integral part of the setting up of this project here at Fawr. And also, I understand that you are very passionate, similar to Martin here, about the development and the improvement of grass production on farm, especially when we look at using it for a horse and herd. So Rhys, if you could join the conversation and possibly present some information about the grass measuring and the management methods. Thank you very much, Dewi. Good evening, everyone. So first of all then, can I just mention that it has been an absolute privilege to work with Credeg and the team at Fawr. Hopefully I will have helped them to put this project together to get it running, and obviously from the figures that Dewi and Credeg have discussed already, that the project has had something of a success. So what I want to do is to take you through some of the main points as to why we measure and record grass, what equipment we can use for this purpose, and how we interpret all of that information and how we act on the data that we would have collected. Also, I just want to talk about the project objectives here at Fawr. So what are the aims, not just in terms of obviously increasing the level of grass growth, but also looking at how that grass is utilized. And also I will just talk a bit about the growth rates for grass in Fawr, which paddocks have performed the best, which possibly need a bit of attention, and the daily growth rate over the whole year. So first of all then, I'll just move to my slides. Okay, so why do we measure and record? Well, if I asked you a question at home, how much grass have you got on your farm? I'm sure I'd have a range of different answers. Some would say that you have grass growing up to your knees. Others would tell you that you have a snooker table paddocks. Others might say that you could have 10 bales, 10 small bales per acre of it, or a range of other different answers as well. But one of the main things that's important for the measurement of grass, the important thing is that everyone is on the same sheet, whether it be on the same farm, Credeg, Martin and the team who is responsible, or in a discussion group. It's possible for Credeg or Martin to enter a discussion group to discuss what's been grown on their farm, along with other members of the group. So then it's a direct comparison, if you will, between the fields and paddocks. So it has a measurable value, so that everyone effectively knows what the growth rate is on farm. So the unit that we use is kilograms of dry matter per hectare. That is the main measurement unit, which, as I mentioned, gives a measurable value. Then it's important that we use this information to allocate a grazing area. So since we know how much grass is grown in the field, we know exactly how many cows we can turn to that paddock and for how long they can be kept there, whether it be half a day, 12 hours, 48 hours, usually. So to make this point clear, if you have 100 cow herd and they eat 15 kilos of dry matter per day, and that they enter a paddock with a cover is 3,000 kilograms of dry matter and come out of that field at 1,500 kilos, you know that roughly there's 24 hours worth of forage in that field for them roughly. So in a 1 hectare field, there'd be enough there for a whole day. Then it is important that we match the cow live weight with the amount of forage that we need to provide. So the example that I used earlier, a cow that needed 15 kilos, well, that obviously depends on 2 things. It depends on her live weight, and also it depends on the lactation point. So we have a table here showing cow live weight on the top, and then her lactation in milk solids, her yield on the vertical axis. And then you can see that the heavier the cow is, usually the more milk she yields and the more forage, the more kilos of dry matter she will need to consume over the course of a day. So as you see from a number of herds that graze from spring onwards, often they tend to be cows that are smaller in stature, because a cow can take 18 kilos of dry matter in physically. That is the sum that it can consume. It takes time to graze. It takes time for the stomach to digest the grass, and there's only so much time in a day that she can spend consuming. So in the case of Ero Fawr here, the herd yields 25 to 30 litres a day. For the low wielders, it'd be 2 kilos of milk solids per day. And as Creddig and you mentioned, the larger cows, we've based this on a 600 kilo animal, and we estimate that they need 22 kilos of dry matter on a daily basis. In time, there will be an average, but that's what the herd will need. But in time, as the lactation goes down, the intake falls. So this is an important table to bear in mind when you consider how much grass you need to provide for your cattle. You need to be aware of how much they yield and what's the live weight. So it may be worth weighing the cattle at some point during the lactation for you to have a rough idea of their live weight. Then, as soon as we know how much grass the herd needs, we are then able to divide the fields into paddocks. And as you can see from the map that I have shown on screen, this is a map of Ero Fawr with a farm right in the middle. That red line shows the tracks that access various parts of the farm, and the fields then, I'm not sure if it's an attribute of the area, but the fields on that side of Anglesey tends to be large fields. As you can see, it's been divided using an electric wire into paddocks that are 1.5 hectares in size on average. And every single paddock then has been given a particular number that makes it easier for the staff to know where the stock is to be moved to. So this is a picture of the herd. As we know, it's a Holstein herd. And in this image that was taken earlier in the year, you can see that they are able to undertake some excellent work, as good as any crossbreed animal in terms of grazing, so long as the weather conditions allow for that. The clement weather obviously helps, but also ensuring that the field has a suitable cover, that there's not too much grass there. They are then able to graze down to the residuals, which is what's required. What's good about this group is that obviously that they are not given TMR. They leave the pala having had flat rate cake, so they don't fill the rumen before they are turned out to grass. They come out with an empty rumen ready to graze, and you can see some of them are happy to be lying down. You can see in the paddock that's next door, it's been grazed to the residual level that's required, and obviously that's credit to the management. And then in terms of the equipment that we can use, well, this slide has been split into two, effectively. The first part for the lazy ones among you who don't want to walk, and then the bottom half for those who are happy to walk your fields on a weekly basis. So in Fawr we use a plate measurer, which you see on the bottom left hand side. That then is plonked, for the want of a better word, 30 times per field, and it provides a measurement. So that piece of equipment is probably the most popular, to be honest, and it costs around £400. It sounds like a lot of money, but the value of the data that it gives you is worth a lot more than that. You've also then got something which is simpler, the sword stick, which is effectively a ruler, but the plant height has been converted to kilo dry matter, and you can use one side of it for one part of the year, one side for the summer term, for the summer period, and the other for the autumn and winter. And then a rapid plate meter for those of you who have quite a few farms in the uplands or larger dairy units have a rapid plate meter that follows a quad. It's connected to an ATV. It's dragged along the field, and that little sledge, as you can see in the picture, takes some 600 measurements per hectare. So it takes a good number of measurements, good number of readings, but it will cost you £2,500 to purchase. So quite similar to the next one, to be honest, in my view. Using satellite to measure grass, and this has become increasingly popular over the past 6 months to a year, where a satellite takes an image, a space image of the cover on your field. It uses weather data and the data that you have input into the system to estimate what the grass cover in every field or paddock. Now, in my view, both these things are very efficient to use. They are very swift, but possibly they don't give you that firm grasp, if you will. That additional information, if you will, that you will get when you walk a field, knowing how wet it is, or if you notice weeds or areas of the field where fence repairs are required, etc. I mean, there are different ways that have different advantages and disadvantages. And then as soon as we have this data, the one important program is AgriNet, and we use AgriNet here at Fawr and have been using it for the past year. And as we input the data about the cover of every field on a weekly basis, it gives us a grass wedge, as you can see in the bottom image. And that wedge, when we look at last week, the end of August, it shows that the grass growth has been 73 kilos per day per hectare, and the demand is 41. So that's the demand from the herd. So you need to grow at least 41 kilos of dry matter per hectare or more to ensure that the cattle are given enough grazing. In this particular case, we have input the 5 fields that are ready to graze, and you'll find those on the left hand side, the higher part of the wedge. So Kaitum Pari is the one that needs a decision about it. As it stands currently, it's got over 3,700. So either it needs to be taken out of the rotation to be pre-mold or ensiled, or a decision needs to be taken about it. So possibly you can skip over some of these paddocks or take them out of the rotation based on the grass wedge, and then target those for grazing. Then on the far end it says days. It shows how many days you have at Kaitum Pari. In this case, there's just over a day's worth of grazing for the herd there at Kaitum Pari. So it is very useful to use by the staff for them to earmark the various paddocks that need to be accessed next. So the objectives of the project at Fawr, then, well, the main objective for this project was to increase the number of litres of milk off grass, and then during that dry year, possibly it wasn't a fair figure for us to use as a basis for the project, but it's what we are working with, 1,700 litres of milk produced off grass in that year, which is effectively similar to the situation from a number of dairy farmers in the area. So if we can increase that to over 3,000 litres to start with, and then further on. So those litres are per cow, and there is a possibility to break these down into per hectare figures. Those were the figures that Dewi mentioned earlier. Then we aim to do this by targeting energy-intensive fodder, whole crop, etc., and trying to target that type of forage to the cows that yield 40 litres, etc. Thank you very much, Rhys. I've just interjected there. I felt that we needed to bring everyone back together in a conversation here. I'm certain that you could continue with your presentation later on. We have received a few questions. If I can access the question, and I do encourage you, please, if you could send your questions through to us. How would you manage the nutrition for the cow as you turn them out? And when you confirm that she is in calf, at what point you turn her out to grass? Does that make sense to you? Yeah. By using AgriNet and the assistance from Rhys, we keep 2, 3, 2, 4 types of cover for those cattle. So we are keen on pre-mowing. So the minute a cow has dropped under 30 litres of milk, ultimately the grass is good enough for her to go out onto. We need to keep an eye on cattle. There are some cattle who are 150 days are still giving 55 litres. Now, obviously, you can't just throw them out, but usually we just monitor what comes down to under that 30 litres level, and the feed wedge effectively that we use enable us to keep a decent cover for them to be turned out onto. Rhys mentioned there about the different methods of measuring grass. I've seen the plate meter at the office. I take that that's what Sarah uses. Yes, she goes every Thursday to walk these fields, and she has noticed this summer was difficult. The plate reader would read very highly because it was so dry. The grass just carried the plate meter and gave some very high readings. But as soon as we go through that period, we've come back to a bit of grass coming through for us, and the pattern returns to normal. As Martin mentioned, with the wedge, in a way, we are able to produce a lot of good quality grass, and we can then take that out of the rotation if needs be. If we are behind it on the wedge because of phenomenal growth, we can take a few fields out and catch up. If we want to push on, we can possibly pre-mow in front of the cattle if necessary, so that they don't waste the grass. And you do that regularly now. Possibly over the past fortnight you've been pre-mowing? Yes, we have. And we use far less fertilizer, to be honest. Martin mentioned the use of slurry. We use a dribble bar, and that's worked well for us. To be honest, sometimes you're concerned when you look at the AgriNet, and well, we found that it's been a good solution for us. Rhys, if I could bring you back into the conversation then, please. One of the attributes, and I'm sure that you were leading into before I interjected, but briefly, if you could mention what the benchmarks are, or what the milestones are for this grassland project here at Fawr. Well, the most important thing to be done from here on out would be to plan for the autumn planner. So moving into that last round of grazing, usually we'd start that at the start of October. So from here on out, we need to prepare the rotation and the grass wedge in readiness for the last round of grazing to ensure that we leave the average cover at 2,200 when the cattle come in. So that's the next important milestone for us to meet, and that would be quite a decent end to the project. So we would have gone from turnout back in March through now to the last round in October, November. So it will have been a full circle effectively.
Okay. Diolch yn fawr, Antirydd.
Thank you very much, Rhys. Possibly I can turn to you, Craig. Your impressions on measuring grass, how much you can see how much of an eye for detail that Rhys has, and I hope that his enthusiasm will have been felt on some of your activities. Martin, I can see that you agree with me. But your impression of the system, you've started on this project for over a year ago. How straightforward is it? Well, to be honest, it is straightforward. I mean, we have the information after Sarah measures the fields. We get all that information together, and it all makes sense. And Martin, who's used to interpreting this, will make the decisions as to which fields are more suitable to go into for a particular week. So it is a mechanism that we use and a useful tool for us.
Yeah. Thanks, course.
It would be a very quick conversation if you weren't best pleased with it. So what do you feel that success would look like for you? I mean, you are investing in this work. What would success look like for you from this work? I mean, how much of an increase in grass, or how much more milk created from grass? What would it take? Well, we've seen on the AgriNet that there are certain fields that aren't performing as they should, so possibly we'll be looking to reseed those particular fields, and the best ones have been, the average is 9 tons per hectare, so the best ones that have hit 14, 15 tons based on the measurements that we've taken. Okay, so we've now got a video clip just to show effectively Rhys and Craig using the plate meter and discussing a few of the issues that we may have touched on already. So if we could go over to that pre-record and we'll watch that. Okay, Craig, we are here in one of the paddocks that have been recently grazed. This was grazed quite thoroughly the last time round. So how has the plate meter been used by yourselves to enable you to manage grass in the way that you do now? Well, we go round on a weekly basis to measure. Sarah, my wife, she goes round on a weekly basis, and then it's put up on the whiteboard that we have in the shack. We then are able to see the results from the measurement. Can then look at the wedge and decide based on that wedge which fields cattle will be turned into in the week ahead, and we've got a count then of how many cows enter which fields. We feed a flat rate of 5.5 kilos at parlour, so the cows take about 17 kilos of dry matter from grass, and they're all at the same stage of lactation at the same time, so it's relatively easy to manage in a way. Then it's a matter of keeping an eye on how much they graze, but usually they come from the field having grazed 1600. That gives the field about a 20-day rest usually until they come back around into it again. We'll apply the fertilizer as we feel is necessary, but in this particular field we have grazed, we've been around with the contractor using a dribble bar, and that has saved a fair bit of fertilizer. So you've used a fair bit of the mower to pre-mow ahead of the cattle this year. Yes, we have done. if we find ourselves going over 3,000 kilos per hectare, we would have been round with the mower, dependent on the weather. If the weather is bad, we tend to cut ahead of them in order for them to eat cleanly. They tend to eat a bit more than I find. The important thing is that you try to maintain the quality of grass between March, when you turn out, all the way through till the end of October. It is credit to you effectively that the grass is to this high standard. It's now the end of August, and you know when you'll be grazing this in September, the quality is there for you. So hopefully there will be an ME of up to around 12 ME, hopefully, the next time the cattle will be here. Okay, thank you very much. So I hope that that will give you an idea of the work that's ongoing here in the fields, and I'm glad to see that we've been able to have a dry day to record there as opposed to the weather we've got today. Martin, if I could bring you into the conversation, you've been responsible for the grass measurement and the ration. How did you get to learn a bit more about Grassland Management, a bit about your background and where you learnt? Well, I'm not from an agricultural background, but I had a weekend job on a farm when I was in school. And this gentleman, he always had an emphasis on having cattle out grazing. And so I spent some time in New Zealand a few years ago. And from that point on, you know, they were milking 1,200 cows there, but there were no feeders in the parlour or anything else. So you really had to ramp up your management of grass and the way that you managed cattle on grass. And as Craig mentioned, when it comes to inclement weather, very often you've got to rethink your strategy. And in terms of a selfish point of view, it's easier to have cattle out, and I enjoy seeing them out grazing covers of 2, 3, 2, 4 on days such as yesterday. It was lovely to see them out grazing. On days such as today, well, it's a bit more challenging. We've also got another video clip, a conversation between yourself and Rhys in the shack where you have a cup. I think that shack is quite famous now. That's where all the major decisions are taken. So we'll have a conversation about that. So if you could play that video for us, please. Okay, so Martin, you're the one who's responsible for setting the grazing pattern for the week ahead. So how do you use the information from Magnet along with this whiteboard?
Well, yeah.
Well, we use AgriNet. It's very handy, to be honest, to have this board. We can see which paddocks are getting ahead of us, which paddocks need to be grazed next. And then it's useful for us to be able to write this field for silage, don't graze, or cows here Sunday morning, etc. Cows in this paddock Saturday PM. So the girl that comes here to work on the weekend, she isn't all that familiar with the layout of the place. So it is very easy, and we've added in certain fields here where we just graze heifers, etc. And we can use those wipeable markers where we want to put fences in, or in some fields we've got to run the fence a bit wayward to get to a water trough. But it does help. I could see that you have a yellow tag on every post, so it's easy for anyone who's coming here to know which paddock is which and how long they are to be put there. AgriNet is a massive help with that because it's very simple to follow in that respect. So how would you manage without the AgriNet and this means of communication? Well, there'd be mixed messages then, but definitely we have seen that we've got far more silage from this platform in terms of bales, in terms of clamp. Sometimes there are fields that are ready to skip when the contractor is here with the chopper, so that goes into the pit. So we've got much more nice silage around and much more quality grass about as well. So you cut it younger and you bring it straight back into rotation. and the contractor has a copy of this as well. We WhatsApp this to the contractor, and we use a lot of the dribble bar after the cattle have been through, and we are able to say fields number 12, 13, 14, and you've got a count of what they put there. And contractors like to have the size of every field and paddock there. I think that's important, the size of every field, for them to have the information. Over time, very often people lose grasp of the size of their fields and paddocks. We use this printout, that printout was stuck there, so when you do try to plan out for the week, then it gives you more confidence to take fields out, other than trying to keep a bit too much and then all of a sudden you've got too much grass in front of you. It's excellent to see. That's excellent, and I hope that shows that we all have a shack where we have a cup of tea. I'm sure that every farm has one of those where the major decisions are taken, so it's great to see how it's being utilised here. And while we were away, Ivan did announce that he's the plumber on the farm. It's obviously an important part of getting the infrastructure right and getting that water piping out onto fields. I'm not sure if you wish to take any contract work as a plumber. I'll ask Credit to provide you with a reference. So, Rhys, back to you now. I just want to touch a bit more about the grass. We are running a bit 10 minutes behind, so if you could press on with this. We've mentioned already how much grass we produce here. So, Rhys, if you could just give a brief overview on what exactly we've achieved to do in terms of growing grass. Okay, just quite simply then, it's a graph showing grass growth at about tail end of last year. We started measuring in September, so we went from September, stopped measuring in December, and then you've got this year's growth on that blue line. But as you can see, in the vast majority of farms, the growth plummeted from May through to June, and then started growing again to over 100 kilos dry matter per day. So it'd be interesting to see what the tap pattern is next year, expected to be similar to last year. So in terms of the average farm cover then, we hope that this year the average farm cover will be less than what it was last year. There was a bit too much grass on the platform, and that needed to be managed using sheep and heifers. So hopefully in this last round we'll be able to have that wedge as we need it, with the average farm cover at 200. And then just to mention what we did earlier, some paddocks achieving 15 tons, some only achieving 7. The yellow bars are the ones that have been ensiled, and we average around 9 tons for the whole platform. These paddocks are the only ones that have been measured 20 times, so there's a range there for Credit to use to make decisions on if there's a means to improve through liming and reseeding, etc. Okay, excellent. Thank you, Rhys. That first slide, I think, was key when you look at the comparison with last year. But the way that we've seen an increase in the number of tons of grass grown here was demonstrated there. Hopefully that growth and progress will continue. Ivan, in terms of the contract, and you mentioned that you sell milk to Arla, what emphasis is there on selling milk off grass with that particular contract, especially with the environmental considerations? I suspect that Arla like to see cows out on grass in order to paint that picture for their customers. It's a PR consideration. I think that's the biggest point, I should imagine. But also they are currently working on a scheme a la garden, where we have to look at how much carbon we utilize, or whatever they refer to now. And that's a part of the scheme that they are using to show that we aren't using excessive amounts of carbons, that we are trying to be responsible, that we aim for that net zero. without a shadow of a doubt, obviously, companies such as Arla will be placing a far greater emphasis on the environmental aspect, and carbon sink is becoming ever more prominent an issue. A number of farmers have undertaken that carbon audit as an integral part of the business, and we'll see more of that in future. And possibly a number of demonstration sites will be having that conversation. We have done it on a few farms already. The measurement tool that we used in the past as Martin says, that we use our own nutrients, our own slurry, use what's available on the farm. We've got a contractor down the road, so we try to utilize that, since they're only 2 miles down the road, and they will come on, and we could see in that dry period, you could see grass growing in lines, and it was interesting. It just shows that we have to essentially use the nutrients that we have on farm to reduce carbon. And obviously the technology is there to facilitate that. GPS, etc., is being used to ensure that you don't over-apply nutrients onto any fields or paddocks. And via Farming Connect, there's 80% funding towards nutrient management planning, and obviously you will have availed yourselves of that, and it's important to consider for soil maintenance as well. I understand that you've been in that discussion group focusing on grazing, and there are new technologies, new opportunities always available. That group, Excel at Grazing, is quite refreshing. You've got people who are far cleverer than I in that group, and it's great to see their point of view, their take on the matter, and the way that they work. It's great to be a part of such a group. Certainly, there are opportunities via discussion groups. We've got over 100 discussion groups running over Wales, and essentially the aim is to develop people to further develop opportunities. We've got the chair of Anglesey Grassland Society with us. It's a privilege to be in the same shed as you, Cledig. Usually we would be in a pub discussing grassland, but we've got a strong group in all fairness. So as chair of that grassland group, obviously you haven't been able to travel as usual under current restrictions, but you've got a strong group here at Anglesey. I know that Dyfrig Hughes has been vital in coordinating all of that work, if he's listening tonight. But it is great to have such an individual. He's great for bringing people together for discussion and organising. And it's important that we do see activities going on farms in other countries. And obviously there's an opportunity via Farming Connect to realise that, and clearly you have taken full advantage, and it's a credit to you that you're chair of such a successful group. There are a number of farmers who have won the Welsh Grassland and British Grassland Society competitions in the club, and there are a number of excellent farmers who are a part of that group. Certainly a number have succeeded and have gained a great deal and much admiration for their work. Okay, so we'll touch on some other projects now, and I've gone, bear with me, one step too far. We'll change direction because we'll consider the future of the herd. This future-proofing is the current buzzword. So in terms of the genetics and the next generation, Cledig, as keen members of the North Wales Holstein group, in the past you have been choosing Holstein attributes on a linear type. I now understand that you're going on genomic information, and that enables you to target the genetics that you want because you breed your own heifers. Well, we don't buy anything in, so we do try to use a lot of assistance from Genus at the moment. They tend to choose the bulls that will suit the cows, and they've got such a range of bulls available to choose from, and it's easier for them to use the genomic testing to test the heifers and then try to pick the best of the bunch in order for us to move ahead a bit more rapidly to get the heifers we want. They provide you with a breeding plan, you set the objectives, and then they will try to choose based on the attributes that you need to focus on in your breeding plan for the type of cows that you want. Well, it helps to breed more fertile cows. The carbon footprint is lower and you produce more milk for less cost, essentially. We've got a clip to emphasize this, a conversation between yourself and Rhys, looking at the herd and looking at one particular cow who's a favourite. So if I can turn to that video clip then, please. Okay, we are here among the cattle. Now, what are your hopes for the herd for the future? What do you hope to breed for? Has this project changed the way that you look at breeding your cattle to fall in line with the grazing strategy? Well, we've always had larger cows over the years, and they are high yielders on a high input, high output system. But now we are targeting more of the grazing season to get grass, to get milk from cows more efficiently. The cows have to change and adapt. Over the years, we have been breeding PLI, but we now emphasize the size and the maintenance of condition and try to target fertility so that it's geared more towards a grazing strategy. So how important do you say attributes such as feet and legs are on this grazing system? Well, obviously, it's imperative that you've got good feet and good legs because they have to walk a lot. And the bigger they are, well, then there are more things to go wrong. So in terms of PLI attributes then, the Profitable Lifetime Index, what are the main things that you choose from? Well, I try to select a bull that has a high PLI figures, and then we target stature and fertility and fat and protein. And that then will give us a better milk price. And that's what we aim for. We'll look at some of these cows and see which ones best suit. So, Craig, what is it about this particular cow that you feel that matches to what you're trying to do here at Fawr? This, to be honest, this cow has gone through the system for the whole year. So she has produced an average of 35 to 40 litres on the TMR. She is 80 days in calf, and then she has been turned out to grass, and she's produced 25 to 30 litres throughout the summer months. And she's kept her body condition. She's gained some weight, and she looks fit. That's what I noticed. She isn't a cow that needs to put any condition on over the dry period. It's important that they get to the right body condition before they are dried off. And this is a particular cow that's been able to do that in what has been a year and off grass for half the lactation. And she's a cow that will produce 10,000 litres easily. And instead of producing half of that in the shed, she's managed to do it on grass. She's made good use of grass. So has this project, Craig, made you reconsider possibly your calving pattern at all? Possibly moving from an all-year-round calving pattern to a different pattern? Well, just being able to see the grass grow ahead of us as we measure it, and being able to manage which fields we put cows into on a day-to-day basis, we've grown more grass. And in a way, that system of cows staying in after calving and are fed TMR and milk off silage and concentrates, they stand to the bull because they are cows that are naturally milky. As soon as they're in calf, they are turned out. But I've noticed that on the farm, as it stands currently, we don't have enough cows to cover the block of land that we have. So in a way, I want to try to get more cows in calf over the winter months in order for me to turn more in calf cows out in the spring. And then I'll utilise the grass with the right cattle in mind. The one thing that we've touched on since you've had to take paddocks out of the platform to make big bales, etc., is that a nuisance for you? Is it handy to have that? Well, every season is different, to be honest. The start of the season, I was worried that we wouldn't have enough silage, but as it happens, being able to pick out certain paddocks, well, you can take fields out, and that adds to the store of silage that you have, and it will be used to produce a lot of milk when those cows will be in. So yes, it's a cost, but I think as years go on, I think we'll have less cost from silage harvesting around the platform. It'll be easier to send and cheaper to send cows there to graze. That's one thing that is happening on a number of farms, that they aren't managing the grass. Possibly they cut silage to feed it in a way, so they use the platform. But what cows do to the platform, now we've been doing the cell grazing. Over the past 2 years, the cows have got used to what they have to do when they go to the field. They don't waste time, they're there, they're grazing, they've been trained to graze, and the land then is a bit more fertile and grows a better amount of grass. That's evident. So you can see that the cow's behaviour has changed, and the more she grazes, the better she grazes. And also the cows are healthier, I'd imagine, from being outside. Everyone likes to see the cows going out, all the staff, etc. You often see a relief that they're in calf, that they're doing a job, and that they're out grazing, that they're cleaner and have better feet for it. And I'd say that they last longer. Okay, so hopefully that will have given you an idea of what's being done with the herding and the type of cow that Gredig and the team are focusing on at Fawr. I mentioned earlier about the next project. So as a demonstration farm, we run 2 projects on the farm. So the first one we've touched on already was based on the grassland. The second is based on transition cow management. Now, that, as we know, is a key period for any dairy herd, and it's important that we pick up on any illnesses or ailments, if there are any. It is a period where mastitis, ketosis, milk fever, lameness and fertility are all issues that you're working closely with your veterinarian on to try to resolve a number of those issues. But I'm certain that you are looking at different means and different technologies to pick up on these problems sooner. You mentioned body scanning or using technology to look at the cow to see if there are any changes and what the body conditioning is, and we'll see how that project develops in future. So hopefully we'll be able to keep an eye on the herd in that respect. For the last 15 to 20 minutes, we'll just present some of the other projects that we are collaborating with external agencies on. So we are trialling new technology, some exciting technology here at Fawr that will enable us to gather data and make informed decisions on our farms. And some of those decisions are pertaining to security on farm and slurry management. So we've got 2 guest speakers who will address us at this point. PC Dewi Evans from North Wales Police. He'll talk about the use of technology, LoRaWAN technology, to improve farm security. And Geraint Hughes will discuss the EIP project looking at slurry management. For those of you who possibly are not aware of the LoRaWAN project, as I was unaware, just a bit of context, what it is, it's a Wi-Fi router that's put up on a shed, and that then gathers data from various sensors that are across the farm. It could be a bolus from within a cow, soil temperature, air temperature, moisture, humidity, distance, a number of things, but it is exciting technology, and technology that hopefully will play a greater part in agriculture in future years. So, first of all then, if I could ask Dewi Evans to join us to explain a bit more about his safety project and the work with North Wales Police. Thank you very much, Dewi. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity to present this project that North Wales Police are calling Future Farms Wales. So I'll introduce myself and I'll try to keep my presentation brief. I understand that time is getting ahead of us. So, as you heard, my name is Dewi Evans and I'm a police officer in North Wales Police. I started in 2007 at Holyhead, not too far away from where you are this evening at Fawr, and since 2013 I have been a part of the Rural Crimes Team, the first of its kind in the country, dealing on a full-time basis with agricultural crime, wildlife crimes, and anything else that falls into crime in a rural area. And we've been very busy over the first few years dealing with issues such as quad bike thefts, cattle rustling, wildlife crimes, people poisoning birds, etc. And although we as a team have achieved great success over the years, we could see that getting to grips with rural crime and rural issues were difficult in comparison with dealing with crime at more urban settlements. And there are various reasons for this. In rural areas, there is less CCTV coverage, there are fewer witnesses, and very often there are fewer forensic opportunities due to surfaces on farms, etc., very often not being clean and therefore don't take fingerprints. So it is far more difficult to get to grips with issues in rural Wales. So I've been working with a number of people who use LoRaWAN technology over the past few months, and I am aware of this new technology and the potential it holds to make it easier for the police to deal with rural crime. So what Future Farms Wales aims to do is to increase that use of technology in rural areas to enable the police to detect a crime. So we've been kindly invited by Farming Connect to share in a way with your Farming Connect network to showcase technologies that can be used to reduce crime. So the intention is, with technology that currently exists, CCTV, etc., the intention is that we invite companies onto farms and provide them with an opportunity to install the technology. So the technology that doesn't already exist or that doesn't naturally exist on the marketplace, LoRaWAN sensors, for instance, that's obviously a new area of work. The intention is to provide an opportunity for people to develop these sensors in the first place. A number are looking to develop these sensors, and in order for us to boost this, we as a police aim to use our influence. We run what we call a hackathon at the end of September, and we are running that with the kind assistance of Bangor University and MSPAC, and we've chosen 3 problems that are problems in rural areas that the police have identified. The theft of quad bikes being one, theft from outbuildings being another, so burglary from barns, etc., and also theft of outboard motors off boats. Obviously, that doesn't involve farmers. So the intention is, during the hackathon, we will offer a financial prize to competitors who can come up with some innovative solutions to all of these problems. They then will be afforded an opportunity to showcase their proposed solutions in the period after the hackathon, and we will then choose which we feel as the most promising and realistic solution, and we will offer them a bursary to work with Bangor University and MSPAC on turning those solutions into ideas that can be turned into businesses, and an opportunity to install the equipment on Farming Connect sites, with the intention that other farmers can see what's available via events, for them to have an opportunity to invest in this technology. So that briefly is what the project is about. There's a number of what we call work streams that are a part of this project, but in essence, those are the main objectives. We have Vodafone, it's a large company who have expressed an interest in the project, and they will be installing equipment in the near future. We are awaiting some details by the end of this month, and we'll be discussing the possibilities with individual farmers, and there'll be a means for people to look at what those companies have to offer them by way of solutions. And that really is the project Future Farms Wales in a nutshell. As I mentioned, there are far more details than that, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you very much, Dewi. We're exceptionally glad to be able to work with you and North Wales Police on the development of this technology on farms. I'm sure that there's a whole raft of opportunities ahead of us, and hopefully we'll be able to work together in discussions in the past. You mentioned that Vodafone have expressed an interest, so we'll see how a big player such as Vodafone can bring something positive to the table, and it'll be interesting to see what agri-tech companies, or anyone else for that matter, will be able to put forward in terms of technology that can be used by the industry. There are numerous opportunities there. It's an exciting time, and we'll see what comes of that hackathon. I think that's a new concept for the agricultural sector. So thank you very much, Dewi. There are no specific questions on that currently, but certainly it's one to keep an eye on. And keep an eye on the website, and there will be updates as the project moves ahead. Next, then, if I could invite Geraint Hughes to be part of the discussion. Similar to the conversation with Dewi, he'll talk about the new LoRaWAN technology, but how it can be used to manage slurry, etc. on farms. Dewi, Geraint, over to you. Good evening. Thank you very much, Dewi, and I'm thankful to Ceredig, Ivan and Martin for the welcome. I'm here to talk about LoRaWAN and the slurry project that's been supported by EIP. For a few moments, I'll give you a background into LoRaWAN, and the news is, in terms of agriculture, that the Internet of Things has reached agriculture. Possibly some of you will have used the Internet of Things in more domestic settings, because there are devices in homes that have been installed for a number of years, but it hasn't been possible to run the technology on a larger scale, such as on farms, until recently, because the network wasn't there. And the device you see on screen now is what's responsible for changing that, because on screen you've got a gateway on a pole that's at Gaerwen, and closer to you in that shed, in that cattle shed, there is a gateway, the LoRaWAN gateway, that stands for Long Range Wireless Area Network. It's a network of waves that enables a farm to communicate with a network of sensors in fields and buildings. And I suspect that you're in the shed tonight on which that gateway has been installed. So that's what a LoRaWAN gateway looks like. There are 17 of these that have been installed, one yet to be installed, and that means that 18 Farm Connect demonstration farms will have a LoRaWAN gateway. This map shows the locations in Wales. This project isn't just relevant to the farms, but also for the locality in Fawr, where you've got quite a flat landscape. People will be able to use this network because Farming Connect has connected the gateways to a public network called the Things Network. You can Google and read up about the Things Network, and there's a means for any person to tap into the LoRaWAN network. The first step in that network are the sensors. They don't look the most exciting or attractive things, and we find a white plastic box that isn't much larger than a cigarette box or a chocolate bar. And this is produced by a company called Elsys, and it's a sensor to measure temperature, and it can pass that message to the gateway that's on top of the shed in Fawr. That gateway then will send the message to the internet, and there's a means then to analyze that data. The whole purpose of the Internet of Things for farmers is to make life easier, to make more informed decisions, to make sooner and quicker decisions, and ultimately to improve the profitability of farms. That's another sensor. Again, not the most exciting looking of things, but it's a sensor that sends out sonic waves in order to measure distance. And one of these will be set up at Fawr. And this is a company that's currently working on launching a sensor that provides an alert for users if something has been opened or closed. It could be a gate, it could be a shed door, anything that opens and closes. And this can be useful information in terms of knowing what's going on farms or on any widespread piece of land. So that's the background to LoRaWAN. There's more information available on the Farming Connect website. I'm a part of the consortium called Cymru Digital that was responsible for the installation of the gateways on farms, and it was a very groundbreaking contract. I can't think of any similar attempt in the UK to install gateways on farms. We've got a resource. The next step is to use it. There's a project that falls under EIP Wales that's currently looking at how we can use these sensors to monitor the condition of fields in terms of the spread of slurry. But the first step now, where we have collected and purchased a number of different sensors from the whole of Europe to try to look at them and analyze the way they work, and then we'll get them to communicate with the gateway. We are now at the point where we have chosen the best sensors, because all this information is not currently available. We'll then be working with the 3 farms. One of those farms will be Fawr, and we will be aiming to start installing the sensors over the forthcoming 2 to 3 months. And it will be an exciting period for this project to see these sensors in the fields. So we will have sensors measuring soil temperature, measuring air temperature, also measuring soil moisture, in order to provide information, and it's recordable information for farmers of what conditions were. It could be useful in hindsight because there is far more scrutiny of when slurry is spread, and also it will provide useful information about ground conditions on farms. And this is one of the sensors that we hope to use by a company called Libelium. You'll see the probes for measuring the soil and the environment around it. So in 5 minutes, that's a snapshot of what LoRaWAN is and a taster of the slurry project with EIP. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Geraint, for that. I truly appreciate your input into this, and also you were able to put things and explain things far clearer than what I could when we look at how this exciting technology will lead to opportunities for farms and companies who will be able to support farms. And as I mentioned, it's very timely, and it's excellent that we have these gateways on our demonstration farms, Pan Wales, 18 demonstration farms, and we are so glad that the team and Dewi, the police officer, is able to collaborate with us. So cross fingers that there will be some exciting opportunities ahead. In terms of other projects then on farms, demonstration sites across Wales, we have demonstration farms including Fawr, we mentioned, Untitled Cow Management. We're also collaborating on Grigloy, looking at cow mobility and infrastructure, so that work continues, and there will be more events in future. And also Pantlas, where we'll be looking at improving grass and silage, and we've also held a demo farm event at Mountjoy, where we were focusing on genomics and the use of nitrogen. So as we move to the end of the meeting, there's one additional speaker, Tristan Sean, who will provide a brief overview of the Farming Connect services available. So Tristan, if I could hand over to you so you can provide that overview of what's available. Thank you very much, Dewi. Good evening, everyone. As Dewi mentioned, my name is Tristan and I work as a Development Officer for Farming Connect on Anglesey. I'm not going to keep you long, I just want to talk quickly about some of the services that Farming Connect has to offer currently. The first one, as you can see on screen, would be the one-to-one surgeries. It's possible to have up to an hour's worth of specialist advice free of charge, either over the phone or digitally, focusing on a range of different subjects, ranging from infrastructure to what's relevant this evening, grassland management, through to planning, diversification, only to name a few. So it is an excellent opportunity. If you have any questions to ask and if you want a quick and rapid answer, you can get that via the surgeries. So on this next slide, this talks about the advisory service, where it's possible to have 80% or even 100% funding for taking specialist advice, detailed advice, focusing on different elements in your business, whether it be technology issues or business issues, technical issues. You can have advice, for instance, on farm infrastructure, advice on nutrient management, advice on grassland management, and also business advice. And very relevant this evening, there's been a lot of talk, and Dewi's mentioned it already. It is possible to have up to 100% funding for a nutrient management plan if you join in with a group of 3 or more farmers. Now, to make the most of grass, you've got to get your soil chemistry and conditions right. And what better way to achieve this than via the Farming Connect Advisory Service, where you can test up to 20 fields and then receive a specialist report based on the findings of that analysis, showing exactly how much lime you need, how much phosphate, and how much potash. So please take advantage of that specific service that's available. Next, I'd like to talk a bit about the application window for training courses. This application window will be open in just over a week on the 7th of this month. So if you would like to undertake some training course, there are up to 80 courses available and up to 80% funding available for this, for the completion of these courses. Get in touch with your development officer and we are more than happy to assist you through that particular process of submitting an application. There are all types of courses available, technological courses, business courses, and courses for machinery, etc. But if you don't wish to undertake a face-to-face course, it is possible to undertake an e-learning course that can be done online from the comfort of your own home at a time that best suits you. They are interactive courses and they're an exciting way to challenge your knowledge and learn a bit more about sectors or different aspects of different sectors in agriculture. So do keep an eye out for these on our website. And also our animal health clinics that are backed by popular demand, effectively. These are very popular and you can have up to £250 worth for testing, sampling, and then receiving one-to-one advice from your veterinarian. You can look at all types of things, whether it be testing for trace elements, looking at issues within the flock of the herd, looking at ailments such as yonis, etc. Those are just a few examples, and please do get in touch with your local development officer for more information. And mentioning the development officers, these are the development officers that are working pan Wales. There are 18 of us in total. The contact details are on the screen next to the picture of the officers. Please do get in touch with us. We would love to hear from you and assist you as we can to discuss anything that I've mentioned this evening, or even if you want to find out a bit more about what Farming Connect can offer you and how we can help your businesses. So please do get in touch with us. And also another team that are there to help you would be the Farm Liaison Service team, the FLS team. They are available to provide more information about any issues involving Welsh Government plans or schemes. And again, the contact details of the FLS officers are on screen for you to see. And there we have it, a whistle-stop tour, as I mentioned. I've talked about some of the services available via Farming Connect. There's much more on offer. If you'd like to find out a bit more, then do get in touch with your local development officer, get onto our website, or get in touch with the general number that you see on screen now. And there we have it from me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tristan. That's a very quick overview of Farming Connect activities and the advice and support available. And just to reiterate what Tristan said, it would be well worth you having a look at the Farming Connect website, possibly have a conversation with your local development officer. Obviously, Credeg and Martin have availed themselves of the services available, and I urge you to take a look at what is available for you. There is another Demo Farm live event from Donegal in a fortnight's time, a fortnight to this evening. That'll be available, and we'll be talking about some of the projects available then. And that brings me to the end of the evening. The last task for me this evening is to thank all of you for joining us. I truly hope that you will feel the conversation to be interesting and of benefit for you. To find out a bit more about the work going on at Fawr here or any of the demonstration farms, get in touch with us as a team. But most importantly, I'd like to thank you, Credeg, Ivan and Martin, for your contributions this evening. And the work that you do on this farm obviously will develop, and I thank you very much for your input. Thank you. For the time being, good evening and goodbye from Fawr.